Nearly 1,600 people charged in connection with the attack could apply for compensation, and that includes people who assaulted officers that day. Both Dunn and Hodges say they continue to get threats. They argue the fund would, quote, compensate.
Let's be completely clear from the start. I am absolutely no fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I don't agree with Ilhan Omar's comments about embracing her. What we are seeing here is purely political. The very man Greene helped put into power has completely turned on her. I wanted to share this clip with you because it exposes the harsh reality of Donald Trump's disloyalty. It is incredibly telling to watch Marjorie Taylor Greene suffer the consequences of the exact political machine she helped create. We're going to watch the full clip first, and then I'll break down my thoughts and full commentary at the end. Let's get right into it.
And good evening to you. I'm Jessica Dean in for Abby Phillip tonight. The most brazen act of presidential corruption this century. That's what two officers are calling Justice Department's new $1.8 billion fund for victims of alleged weaponized prosecution. In this new lawsuit, former Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn and D.C. Metropolitan Police Officer Daniel Hodges claim that fund endangers them personally and is a violation of the Constitution. Nearly 1,600 people charged in connection with the attack could apply for compensation, and that includes people who assaulted officers that day. Both Dunn and Hodges say they continue to get threats. They argue the fund would, quote, compensate and empower the very people making those threats. They say it signals, quote, to past and potential future perpetrators of violence against them that they need not fear prosecution. To the contrary, they should expect to be rewarded. And they both spoke to CNN today. Here's what they said.
It's a slap in the face, it's salt in the wound, if whatever you want to call it. But this is something that Donald Trump believes in, and he said this from day one.
Why should we be paying people to attack the Capitol, to threaten to kill the vice president, to try and stop the transfer of power?
President Trump defended the need for the fund today.
So the anti-weaponization of people, I mean, people were destroyed. They went to jail. Their families were ruined. They committed suicide. You know, all the Biden administration and the Obama administration, both of them. I mean, the Obama administration started it. We're reimbursing those people for their legal fees and for their costs and for anybody involved. You know, it was the most violent thing I've ever seen in politics, what they did. But we think that anybody involved in that process should partake. And you're talking about peanuts compared to the value. It destroyed the lives of many, many people.
So we now have those lawsuits we were just talking about. We also heard from Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill today. I'm joined now by all of our guests here at the table. I do want to play a quick clip from several Republican lawmakers who were questioning this DOJ fund. Here's what they said.
I will tell you my first reaction was this doesn't pass the smell test.
It sends a signal, hey, go breach the Capitol, destroy the building, assault police officers, and you may even get compensated for someday. That's absurd.
We got to unpack exactly what it is, what the source of the funding is, in order to stop it and or reverse it. Right?
So you want to stop it?
Oh, 100%.
And we welcome everyone here at the table. Sochi, I want to start with you because you spent some time at DOJ and this idea that they prosecuted so many of these people. And now this idea that there would be this fund to compensate some of these people and that it's going to be left up, Todd Blanche says, to this kind of arbitrary group of people that they're going to decide that the president can get rid of anytime he wants. Yeah. It's a remarkable thing.
It's completely shocking. And I was there when they were prosecuting these cases, and it was a top priority for the administration. And I will note is that while President Trump continues to talk about how the last Justice Department weaponized the government and prosecuted these people, it's just absolutely not true. If you look at the cases themselves, they were all all these cases were brought, and none of them, even when they were on appeal, were acquitted by. They were not acquitted by a jury, and they did not. They ended up moving forward. So the fact that people are talking about how the Justice Department weaponized these cases is absolutely ridiculous. The other thing I'll know about Todd Blanche is he is not only the president's personal attorney, but he has no business being involved in a settlement of this matter. He should have recused himself. CNN had reporting last week that talked a little bit about how he had been, they had recommended that he recuse himself by top career Justice Department officials, and he didn't do that. And I know that when he was talking to Paula Reed, it evidently came up about how he was the one who essentially signed off on some of this stuff. So it's concerning overall, and my hope and the only solution to this is for Congress to act.
Okay, but there were some of these cases, January 6th, there were some very bad actors. There's no doubt about that. But there were other people who, if you look at the entire federal system throughout the United States of America, who got punished in a way that was much more harsh than typically people. I mean, besides there was a handful of people who did horrible things, but the majority of them was trespass. It was trespass. The majority was they went somewhere where they weren't supposed to go. That's a crime.
No, they were part of a mob. They were part of a mob.
But that's look.
That they just went somewhere like they went to the local 7-Eleven.
But I'm talking about the law.
I'm talking about the capital of the United States.
Listen, I think it was the worst day in American history. So 9/11 was the worst day in American history, but this is a horrible, horrible day. I'm not defending what happened that day. I'm being a lawyer. I'm not talking about the politics. Okay. I'm talking about what they were charged with and what their ultimate sentences were. There were people who were held in solitary confinement for trespass. There were people who killed themselves in prison over this. And the president has the
January 6th
as a person who's written a lot about mass incarceration, when I look across all of the ways that the Justice Department has punished people who did not deserve to be punished, put them in solitary confinement, all the things. Do you think that this group of people deserves $1.8 billion?
No, but I don't think it's limited to this group of people. As far as I know, I think Biden's son could go and ask for this, say, hey, I was targeted by the Justice Department. I need my money back.
How was he targeted? Hold on. How was he targeted by the Justice Department?
I'm not saying it would be a viable claim, but I don't think the way I read the press release, it's just for January 6th.
You don't see this as obscene. I see it as absolutely obscene. No.
I would agree with the first senator. It's a little beyond the pale of normalcy. How about that?
We go back one step, because this is a perfectly good debate about why would you pay money to people who are convicted criminals. There is a system already to deal with those issues. But let's just talk about the fact that we have a quote unquote settlement for $1.8 billion. Let's leave aside that it's collusive, because the plaintiff and the defendant are the same person.
Yeah, that's not typical.
But then so one of the reasons you know it's collusive is not just that they're the same party. Donald Trump himself said, when he brought the case, saying, I know this is odd because I'm on both sides. But let's look at the merits of the case. The merits of the case were, and this was in front of the federal judge who had it in Florida, was that there was no case. The reason the IRS general counsel quit is obvious, because the IRS is defending the IRS, the public, for the same type of violations and claims that are made by Donald Trump. But here, when it's Donald Trump, they pay out the money. The clear way that this case should have been dismissed is it was not brought timely. It was supposed to be made within 2 years. Do you know how much money that means that the public would owe Donald Trump? Zero. And zero is a lot less than $1.8 billion.
It's not Donald Trump who's getting the money, correct?
But that's irrelevant.
Because
the money is styled. The money is styled.
Some people have argued
it's not going in his
that
pocket.
it's
That's
his
different
allies,
than him not
that
getting
he's
it.
able to then reward allies. What do you think about that with the $1.8 billion?
Well, again, according to the fund, the way it's written is it's not supposed to go to Donald Trump's allies. It's going to be a process. There's going to be people appointed by, I think, members of Congress, members of the executive branch.
The vice president stood up on stage and said the only people who haven't gotten any sympathy were the people who had stormed the Capitol and voted for Donald Trump. The vice president was saying that these were going to be Trump voters and people who stormed the Capitol for him.
On the question of who this would be, we do have a clip from Todd Blanche talking to CNN today about who this would be and if it would be people who assaulted cops. This is what he said.
One of the factors the commissioners have to consider is what the claimant did, the claimant's conduct, okay? So in the hypothetical you just described, the claimant would have to say, I assaulted a cop and I want money. So whether the commissioners will give that person money, that claimant, it's up to them. But that's one of the factors they have to consider for the very reason that was raised yesterday, which should be raised, which is that President Trump, this Department of Justice, does not stand for assaulting law enforcement.
So we still don't have a clear answer. There's clearly not a, if you assaulted a cop, you can't apply. You can. It's the commissioners who, again, can be fired by Donald Trump, the president, at any moment. And they get to decide who this would be. We also have reporting now that the head of the Proud Boys is going to apply for this restitution.
Look, you can be very reluctant to say that nobody deserves restitution for things that happened in the Biden administration. I'm reluctant to say that, and also acknowledge that this is obviously a gimmick designed to advantage the president's political allies, not necessarily financially, but certainly ideologically. It's not just $1.8 billion, it's $1.776 billion, because it's definitely not a gimmick.
Well,
However,
he's tied it to the 250th anniversary, right?
Right. However, the president does have a point insofar as what he's doing is not necessarily unprecedented if you're talking about rewarding your ideological allies. What Joe Biden did at the very end of his presidency.
How did he reward his allies? Joe Biden?
I'm about to tell you. At the end of his presidency, DOJ, an ethics attorney, in writing, said, Joe Biden, you cannot say that you have pardoned nonviolent drug offenders. It is, quote, untrue, at the very least misleading. And that's exactly what he did. He said, I'm going to flatten individuals, render them just an avatar of a tribe, and say you're all pardoned and commuted, and this is all nonviolent drug offenders. It was not true. To say nothing of the fact that you had fraudsters, this Cuyahoga County guy, the cash for cars judge who was imprisoning judge. But leave that all aside.
But two wrongs make a right. I mean, let's assume that assume everything that you said is true.
It is true.
So
check my facts.
Let's assume that. How does that make what's happened we're talking about correct?
It doesn't. And what I'm frustrated by is the degree to which you hear from some on the left when you say things that are consistent. Oh, this is obfuscation. How does that make it right? No, what I'm saying is a consistent revulsion to the abridgment of procedure, of law, and the diminution of the rule of law in this country is something we should oppose wherever it comes from. And it came
you
from
were
the Biden
you were
administration,
comparing the Trump administration to the Biden administration, and I will say, Joe Biden purposefully did not pick a attorney general that was going to do whatever he said. And frankly, we were criticized by the left on a lot of investigations because people thought we weren't bringing them too fast, because we weren't doing them.
DOJ about what he was doing at the end of his term.
Let me tell you the process. The pardon attorney, their role is to make recommendations to the President of the United States on who should be pardoned. That is a recommendation. It is up to the President of the United States on who to pardon. Did the Justice Department know that Joe Biden was going to pardon his family? Absolutely not. Did the Justice Department know that Joe Biden was going to pardon the January 6th committee? Absolutely not. Would the Justice Department recommend that? Absolutely not. But that is very different.
Then you know better than I.
That is very different than the Attorney General of the United States, the Trump's personal lawyer, essentially negotiating a settlement with Donald Trump's attorney to help his allies and give $1.8 billion of taxpayer money to his friends.
And the procedure,
the Biden administration did not do that.
Yes, and the violation of the procedure is bad, and it's bad when the Biden administration does it and when the Trump administration does it. And you know better than I, Sochi, that in writing, the Justice Department said Joe Biden did not give members of Congress who sought to advise this process the time to have
I wonder if we could go back to what we're here to discuss, because it sounds to me like we may be in violent agreement. I don't hear anyone saying that this is not sort of a fig leaf for a settlement, that the plaintiff and the defendant were on the same side, and that there were valid arguments that the IRS could have asserted. So that seems like I don't hear anyone disagreeing with that's point one, which is the $1.776 billion is sort of conjured up as a way as a fig leaf to get that money. And I don't hear anyone saying that maybe there are some small quantum of people that, not just people in J6, but a whole range of people who could deserve restitution. But if you're planning on doing this wholesale, as the president just said in the clip you played, that this was a grave national injustice, and we're going to be paying all of their legal fees. And remember, he pardoned them all en masse. He did not do a triage. So I don't hear anyone here at the table saying that they would disagree with the commission saying, oh, you know what, we're going to give huge amounts of money to people who attacked police officers and did more than just trespass.
Right. It sounded like Todd Blanche was saying that that's not what the president wants, and he's on the record as saying he's not supportive of anyone attacking a police officer. I just want to talk about the two officers who brought the lawsuit.
He did pardon.
He's already pardoned the people who
I
attacked
understand.
police
There's
officers.
a
so it
difference
can't
between
be true.
pardoning them. They already did their jail time. So there's a difference between
They haven't
pardoning
done it
them.
all.
Okay, but they did a 4
They haven't
years
done it
ago,
all.
3 years. The two officers who said they were bringing a lawsuit, and I'll defer to Andrew and my colleagues here. I don't think they have standing to bring a lawsuit. You have to be harmed. So the fact that there's money that's going to people that could harm them, there's not a controversy. To bring a case, there's got to be some controversy. It can't be, there might be a controversy. This might lead to somebody harming me. So I think on a summary judgment motion, if they bring that lawsuit, it'll be dismissed.
We have to go to break, but quick question just for my clarification. But what if they were there that day and were emotionally harmed? Does that count?
So I actually agree that the argument for standing, because it turns out, not every taxpayer could say, oh, I want to sue because you're using my taxpayer money. That's under the law. You would be basically opening up the courts to just myriad lawsuits. So here I agree that the reason that these people say they're individually hurt is pretty weak. So in terms of that's not the merits. That's just whether they have an individual stake.
You're talking about, standing.
Exactly. So it's a very procedural issue. It doesn't mean that this is correct. There are all sorts of other people who may sue who have better arguments for standing. But I agree that this lawsuit is maybe not the best in terms of seeing it go to the end of the day. But I think for the moment, I think we're going to see a political solution here rather than a legal solution.
All right. Up next, Senator.
Now that we've watched the clip, I want to give you my unfiltered perspective on this interview. To be completely honest, watching the two of them is like watching Dumb and Dumber. Look, some of the claims Marjorie Taylor Greene made, which I absolutely believe are true, simply highlight the sheer corruption surrounding Donald Trump. That part is no surprise. But what is truly embarrassing is how both she and Piers Morgan are completely playing dumb about why Trump turned on her in the first place. They refuse to state the obvious. This is about the Epstein files. Trump isn't shutting this down to protect his friends. He's doing it to protect himself. When you look at his aggressive retaliation against Greene, combined with how hard the Department of Justice and figures like Pam Bondi allegedly worked to keep those files under wraps, it points to a massive cover-up. An innocent person doesn't destroy their most loyal ally just for demanding transparency. As for Greene crying foul over the horrific death threats targeted at her child, let's look at the facts. Throughout her time in office, she spearheaded countless public dogpiles against her political opponents, which undoubtedly led to those exact same types of threats for others. She championed this toxic MAGA culture, and while no one should ever target a child, it is hard to have sympathy for someone who built her career on that exact brand of cruelty. Meanwhile, Piers Morgan's shock over Trump's cold response just proves how blinded he is by his access. Piers knows exactly who Donald Trump is. Look at how fiercely Piers attacks people like Nick Fuentes or Kanye West when he disagrees with them. Yet when it comes to Trump, whose actions are arguably far worse, Piers loses all his energy. Why? Because Trump is exactly where Piers Morgan's bread is buttered. But let me know what you guys think about this entire exchange in the comments below. While you're down there, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and turn on the bell notifications so you never miss a breakdown. I appreciate you all, and I'll see you in the next video.